Hi, so I wanted to briefly cover switches and selects and how you can use them. So usually what you would use to select different paths of your execution is branches. So if I type branch, you can do something like this. But if you want to have multiple outputs and there is a bit more complicated setup, you would usually have to nest the branches, which gets messy really quick and it's prone to errors. One thing that can help with this is switches. So if I type switch, we can see we have a lot of different versions, but some of the most common ones that you're going to use are switch on string, int, and then enum. So let's go for a switch on string. So this lets you evaluate whatever input string you have, and you have a bunch of outputs. So if I click plus in here, we can see at the right, when you click on the switch, you get all of those values. You can just plus it and add as many as you want. And you can also do it in here. And then you can do, let's say, string 1, string 2, and stuff like that. So this is basically an array. You can make it case sensitive, or if you don't care about uppercase letters, and you can also have default pin, which is basically where you're gonna go if you don't find anything. I usually disable default pin. Depending on what you're doing, you don't need it, but this is one way. Then we can also do switch on int, and the idea is pretty similar. So you can just basically add as many values as you want. And what you can do is change the starting index, since for the int switch, you basically have an array of incrementing values. You can select what is the starting index. And the last one, we can show it by first creating an enum. So I'm gonna name it, let's call it test enum. Let's open it up. I'm just gonna add values. Let's do character states. So let's do idle, walking, and that, let's see. So now what we can do is test enum. So we can just type test enum and it should give us switch on test enum. And now we have set values, so we don't have anything in the details. And that's because we cannot remove or add. It's gonna just show us the enum values. And here we have our 3 values that we added. So let's delete this. And it can choose, and it's gonna choose based on whatever input it is. Good thing about switches is that their cost is constant. So even if I have 10 output execution pins, it's gonna cost basically the same. It's just gonna evaluate whatever we have in here and put us through to the right value. Next thing are selects. So what the switches do is you have one input and it gives you multiple outputs. And what selects do is you have multiple inputs and you can have one output. So if I type select, and we just have this generic one, you can also do some other ones, but this is it's kind of default one where you can kind of customize it after you create it. So this is kind of the options you have. So you have booleans, integers mainly, and then you have enums. So if I click, let's say, boolean, we just have our true, false, and our index. So basically what happens when this index is true and what happens when it's false. So if I have, let's say, let's change this. So you can have this pin type to be different stuff. So if I click change pin type, you can't have everything, but what you can do is, let's say this pin type is string. So if it's true, let's say U1, and if it's false, you can do you lose. And then we have some index that evaluates it. Basically, maybe index is true or false if you won or lost. And then maybe you have print. And let's delete this switch. So if I connect it in here, based on this boolean value, we're gonna print lose or win. Now, a different way, if you weren't using this select, would be to use a branch. And we can see how this can get a bit more messy and complicated. So first we have the duplicate print string, and then we have additional branch string, and then we have all condition. So this kind of how stuff can get complicated, and this select node makes it way more easier to deal with. And this gets extra nice if, let's try to change. So if you right click here, you can click change pin type, and let's change it to, let's say, integer. So we can see how this can get extra nice if you have string 3 or something, string 4. So we would change. So you win, you lose. Now it doesn't make much sense. So maybe you can do, let's say, string 1 and then string 2. So we can see now if we are using the branch, we would have to do something like this. We'd have to check, is some string equal to string 1? It is, print string 1. If it's false, is it string 2? Print string 2. If it's not, is it string 3? So you would basically be creating this. Select makes this way easier, where you don't need any of this. You can just connect it like this, and now you can have as many values as you want. And you can also do this with enums. So if we do our test enum. Now our options are locked to however many enums we have. So right now we have just 3, but now we can easily print stuff or easily do whatever. So you don't have to have string in here. It can be a location if you want, it can be whatever you want. Select nodes are really customizable and let you do a lot of stuff without relying on branches, for loops, or stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully this made sense. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or clarifications on how they work. Select nodes are also very optimized, so having multiple values doesn't mean it's gonna get X times more expensive when you add them.